Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to 30 for Knowledge. I'm George.
And I'm Danny. And this week is your... Well, we're starting with a little topic that you picked out for this week, so
Yes,
you'll be educating me.
it is my topic this week. So we're two 30-somethings who are going to be teaching each other about a random topic. And as Danny mentioned, I'm first this week. And our first topic is very interesting. I'm going with vacuum cleaners. And when I first suggested this to you, Danny, a couple of weeks ago, how did you feel about vacuum cleaners back then?
If I'm being completely honest, I hadn't thought about them that much. I was just a man who was like, man, I don't have enough vacuum cleaners in my life.
I think with vacuum cleaners, I've always thought about, and I'm deliberately not calling them Hoovers for reasons
I was going to bring that up.
I'll talk about later. But when I think about vacuum cleaners, it's like a measure of my adulthood. And so I will know when I've made it, when I've got myself like a really, really sexy Dyson.
So, yeah, I was going to say it has to be a Dyson. So because I live with my parents, because I'm a man-child, they have a proper Dyson. And when I say a proper Dyson, I mean a cordless Dyson, and it's got its own little dock in the wall.
Ooh, a dock in the wall?
It's got a dock in the wall. And then they drilled in holes and put a dock, and you put the Hoover there when you're finished with it so it can go back to recharge.
Now, funnily enough, what we're going to be covering today isn't too dissimilar from what you just described. So Dyson might not be that as ingenuitive as you think.
Okay, that's a word.
Okay. So I think I'm just going to kick it off then.
Go for it.
Right. Buckle in, Danny. This is going to be a whirlwind, an absolute whirlwind. It's a tale of dust, betrayal, sucking, and death. And penis injuries.
I'm so ready. There's
at least one shouting match. And at least one really serious heckling involved.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's quite a few angry white men shouting at each other in this story.
You know what?
In the history of the vacuum.
It sounds like a really British argument, because like if this was any other kind of time or place, and you talk about the drama, I'd be picturing like people like beating each other up, not a heckle match and arguments.
Oh, you sad, poor, naive little boy. It's not just in England, Danny.
No. Oh.
This goes across the pond.
Oh, wow.
This is all over.
Truly global.
Mainly England in the
Mainly
US.
Mainly dudes talking English.
So before we kick it off, really, is vacuums have come in all different shapes and sizes.
They do.
Some of the ones I found out about, there were huge trucks that were like the size of elephants.
That were vacuums.
That were vacuum cleaners, and they would park outside your house.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely massive, like £4,000 we're talking. Absolutely huge.
Of weight?
In weight, yeah.
Right, okay.
Absolutely huge things. They had to be drawn by horse and carriage. Then you've got things like the Baby Daisy, which was a bellow system where if you kind of imagine one person churning butter with a stick,
okay,
and then another person actually doing the hoovering. So for a long time, hoovering was a two-man job.
It was a two-man. Was it? I don't know if you know.
Two-person job.
What I was going to ask was this like because it was back in the day, and it was like women do this, or was it more like this is machinery? Clearly, women can't do this, so the men will do it.
That is a really, really good question.
Okay. We'll add that to the question.
And I am gutted I didn't further explore that. I am actually gutted I didn't further explore that. But however, I did see old videos and adverts of people sharing their this new technology they've invented, and one of them was like a little mini surfboard. Do you remember that when we were kids, there was like a bouncy, plasticky latex ball, which then had like a plastic platform on top, and you kind of had to balance on it, like half a medicine ball and then like a flat thing on top.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a what are they called? Not a surfboard, snowboard. Are you with me?
No, because I know what you're talking about.
So it's like a surfboard on top of a medicine ball. That old
I just don't understand why you were like, why it's like clearly not a surfboard. It couldn't be that. It's obviously a snowboard.
It's a snowboard.
Okay, right.
Anyway, that thing.
Uh-huh.
So there was a design which looked like that. So it was a man in this advert I saw. There's a man on a surfboard, which was the bellows, going back and forth, up and down on his legs, and then his wife started hoovering the curtains.
Oh, what? So he's like manually pumping the suction or whatever.
As I said, man, it was always a two-man job, two-team job, person job.
What kind of year or period are we talking here?
We're going to get there.
Okay,
we're going to get there.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
You're getting ahead of yourself. Before we get started, I think we should acknowledge our sources for my research for this episode, which was the Smithsonian and Science Museum websites. Wikipedia has helped a lot. And on YouTube, there was a great video by the Garden State inventor. So if there were some very interesting things in this story, I would go check them out because I learned a lot from there as well. And at the start of this story, we have to give a quick shout out to the kind of, I wouldn't say underdog, but like the early father, maybe the twinkle in the eye of the vacuum cleaner.
Okay.
And that was John S. Thurman of St. Louis, Missouri.
Is that your Missouri accent?
That was my Missouri accent. I apologise a lot. So Thurman invented the pneumatic carpet renovator in 1898. And the PCR came on a huge horse-drawn carriage to your house. But it was cool and people liked it because it had a receptacle to catch the dust, which was something people hadn't thought of before. So before Hoovers were invented, the idea was leaf blowers.
Right. So they were just sucking dust out of the house.
No, they're just blowing dust around.
Oh, genius.
Leaf blowing, but like dust blowing.
Indoors.
But this guy, Thurman, he had like a receptacle, like a huge, I don't know, dish to try and to like catch the dust as it fell as he went.
So just a big basket.
So it's a bit, it was good at the time, but obviously there's room for improvement, as there always, because I mean, isn't a true vacuum cleaner because it's not sucking the dirt,
cleaning.
It's blowing the dirt.
Yeah.
Rather than sucking it in. So then along came a spider into the tale, who is Hubert Cecil Booth. Okay. And we're back in England. Very exciting. So Hubert Cecil Booth, say his name really badly there. Hubert Cecil Booth was born in Gloucester, England in
It's a very British name to be fair.
It is. It's a very British name. In 1871. And he attended a demonstration of Thurman's work in 1901. And this is where we get our first white man heckle. This is the heckle I was talking about earlier. It was great.
Just boo.
So reportedly, Booth said, I asked the inventor why he did not suck out the dust. Oh, I'm going to try and do a voice for Booth, like an old man voice.
However confident you are in an old man
I'm going to
voice.
give it a go. I don't know what accent I was going to go for there. I asked the inventor why he did not suck out the dust, for he seemed to be going round 3 sides of a house to get across the front. Did that sound like old-timey English, man? It was a bit too cockney. I was going for posh.
I don't know. I picture... He almost sounds like he could own a railroad.
He could own a railroad. That's good. It's good to have land. And apparently, Thurman didn't react very well to this heckle. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, the guy's showing off, like, it's a really hard time. Like, it's like the late 1800s, early 1900s. Poverty is like really bad, and
life is just difficult.
Life is really difficult, and you've made an invention which is really good for the time, and someone just comes along being like, points out your mistake or like something really obvious.
Yeah. I'd be pissed.
I'd be pissed too.
I'd be fuming.
Apparently, according to Booth, Thurman reacted and remarked that sucking out dust was impossible, and that it had been tried over and over again without success. Then he walked away, and Thurman walks out of this tale.
Never seen again.
So, inspired by this demonstration by Thurman and his own heckle and like his own idea, which he came up with on the spot. By the way, like Booth was a prodigy in terms of inventing. He designed bridges. He was a bit of an architect, and only later in life he turned his hand to inventions.
Not just a good heckler. Not just a good heckler.
Okay. And so his experiment to work out if his plan for vacuums would work. Okay, so picture this. He laid his cloth, like his handkerchief, over a chair. Now, remember like old school discos in like church halls and stuff? Do you remember like the plush chairs that would always be pulled out?
Yeah.
They were a bit like felty.
Yeah, gross.
Do you know exactly what I mean?
Yeah.
And so he laid a cloth, imagine doing this, right? He laid a cloth over that chair. So many people have sat on that chair, bearing in mind, at the time we had vacuum cleaners and he didn't. He laid the cloth over the chair, put his mouth on it, and breathed in to suck up the dust through the cloth, choked, nearly dying from how much dust there was, bearing in mind he's an old man, and then he's like, and he like takes out the cloth out of his mouth, and lo and behold, look what I've got, everybody, I caught the dust. I nearly died. So that's
there must have been a better way. There must have been.
I mean, the greatest inventions start from the simplest experiments, I think.
You couldn't just call a guy in from the street, be like, hey, I'll pay you 2 farthings. Just suck on this.
What, suck on this chair?
Well, yeah, the chair, I mean. Well,
I've laid a cloth down for you. It's clean.
It's fine. It's two farthings. Come on, that lasts like 6 months in old-timey England.
Whether or not that story is entirely true, I think, is up to some debate. But I quite like that story. I think that's a good
I don't see him having a motive to be like, you know what, I'm going to make up a story of me sucking on a chair and choking to death.
And I mean, and that's it. And that's how vacuums were invented.
Okay.
And that's it.
So, wow.
Yeah.
Bit of an abrupt end to the invention of it. So he sucked on a chair.
Yeah.
Almost died, and then was like, aha, the vacuum cleaner. Eureka. Now I just need a thing that isn't my mouth.
I'm totally kidding.
Okay. Right.
This is just the beginning.
Oh, just the beginning. Okay.
This is you don't know what kind of bloodshed is in store after this.
Okay.
It all brings up now.
Okay.
It all goes crazy.
I'm ready.
It's kind of like an arms race at this point.
Okay.
This is the start of the arms race.
A suck race.
This is the secret Cold War vacuum arms race.
Okay. All right, I'm ready to.
Ready?
I'm ready to jump into Act 2.
Because meanwhile, across the pond, Danny, at the same time, so independently of each other, so they had no interaction with each other. So Herbert Cecil Booth sucked a chair, and he was like, "Eureka! I've got it." Meanwhile, across the pond, USA, we've got my big man, my favourite man in the story, David T. Kenny. So David T. Kenny was known as the storybook inventor. And he was born to Irish immigrants in 1866 in White House, New Jersey. So he started a plumbing company in 1891 at 25. And he was always known as quite a shrewd businessman, worked really hard from very humble origins. Mm-hmm. And later on in life, he'd be seen as this kind of like great working class hero, like the perfect American who worked from the ground up and created like a huge business for himself.
American dream.
The American dream, absolutely. So his company got really successful making toilets and water closets, and he was constantly tinkering and inventing. And he had loads of patents in the works of the US government. And later on in life, he'd be working a lot more with patents than he would be with inventions. And patents would become very big later on in the story. But he was so successful with all of his like plumbing stuff that in 1901 he started moving into house cleaning inventions. So thinking about David Kenny, he made one invention, and this is one I mentioned earlier, which weighed 4,000 pounds. Again, all of these old vacuums had to be drawn in like huge horse and carriages because they were so huge.
Okay.
So like Herbert Cecil Booth's one, his one was called Puffing Billy.
So British.
So British, right?
So British. And
he would like, once he'd got his technique of sucking on the chair and he'd applied it to like his machines.
Once he applied it to something that wasn't his mouth. And it was like,
absolutely. Yeah. He made these huge machines which would go out places like, Buckingham Palace and rich people's homes. And he'd essentially, they'd hire him and it's like, please let me put my pipes through your windows. And these huge pipes would have to like be carried in through the doors and the windows so they could clean the inside, with the main vacuum being out on the street. It's so big.
Why did you make him sound like Palpatine?
I don't know. It's a bit creepy, like
pipes.
Let my pipes inside your house.
Okay, I can picture it.
So it was like a big undertaking to clean your house.
Sounds like it.
And randomly at the same time, carpets were very popular.
I guess they were seen as like the luxurious thing at the time. Because I imagine before that it was just like planks.
Planks.
And then it was like, hey, wait, we're not animals. Let's have carpets. Let's have really dirty, dusty carpets that you have to put your mouth on to clean.
Or just move dust around.
Or just move dust around.
And he invented, but we're going back to Kenny. Kenny invented this central vacuuming operation. So earlier you mentioned about how your Dyson plugs into the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So Kenny invented a huge machine which would essentially live in like the bottom of these huge buildings, like the White House was a famous one he had one installed in. And they had little nozzles in like the bottoms of the walls in like each room. And so you could just come along, attach a pipe to the wall, and then you'd start hoovering, and the hoover was actually in the bottom of the building. So you could clean the whole building with one huge hoover and this suction system, which operated on all the different floors.
Wait, and the dust went, did you say into the basement?
Yeah.
So there was just a room in the basement that was just dust.
So there was a machine in the basement, which was a massive vacuum. So imagine your portable electric vacuum you have now.
Right.
But that was like a huge monster that you had to feed constantly that lived in your basement. and you had to use like pipes coming out of the wall. To, like,
I'm picturing. Remember Home Alone 1, whenever Kevin went to the basement, now like the grill was going.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think that's a great image for it.
Okay, it wants dust instead.
But like, from pictures I saw, it looked quite neat. There was like a little gold or bronze disc at like the bottom of like the wall, like the awning, and they would just come along when they were ready to hoover the pipe and just like stick it in, and they were good to go.
That does sound.
There was like a little key that they turned, and the suction started, and off they went.
The user experience sounds pretty straightforward.
Pretty slick.
Yeah,
pretty slick.
All things considered.
But they didn't really help, and this was always going to be a problem when like electricity was in its early days. It didn't really help smaller towns and people living in the countryside because they don't have electricity, they don't have access to it, and so when we start moving into electric hoovers, the market isn't really there for them. So this is still like quite a city-based thing.
Yeah.
Where all the wealthy people are. So
this is still very much an upper class or upper middle class kind of thing to have. It wasn't the average Joe.
Oh, absolutely.
Wouldn't have it. Okay.
And we're going to get into how the vacuum industry diversified to kind of include the average Joe.
Okay.
Because that's where the real money is. And so after he invented the vacuum operation, so we're talking about like early 1900s here, about 1901, 1902, and around this time, Kenny was donating portions of his land and his profits to the Sisters of Mercy, which were nuns who were his daughter's teachers. And he even helped them move from Bordentown, New Jersey to Watchton, New Jersey, or Watchtown, New Jersey. And he helped them build a school. He opened a school up in 1908. And the church even awarded him a title, which was the Papal Chamberlain.
Wow.
What do you think, as a good former Catholic schoolboy, Danny, what do you think is the job of a Papal Chamberlain? In the picture, he had like a ruff, and he had like a cool hat.
Okay.
And like a couple of medals.
I mean, I genuinely don't know, because, yeah, what would, I mean, if I'm going to give a serious answer, it sounds like a mostly ceremonial title or something where he doesn't actually do anything. But are you about to wow me and say, like, no?
No, I asked because I have no idea.
Oh, okay, right.
I have a similar thought, but it's probably just like, you are the Pope's representative in your town.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do very much.
It's like when, I don't know, you're given an OB and you're like an officer of the British Empire or whatever, and it's like, well, you're not actually going to go overseas and start fighting people, are you? You're just going to carry on doing whatever you're doing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So
we're making assumptions here, but
we are massive assumptions.
Yeah, education. Yeah.
But you know, my beloved Kenny, you know, he's an Irishman, love him for that. Obviously, quite a generous man, it seems.
It sounds like I didn't know that the origins of the modern vacuum cleaner were based in such charity.
Wow.
Well,
this is why I also really like this story, is because Kenny, while a very charitable man, supporting the nuns, opening schools, he too went to a demonstration of vacuuming technology. He too went to a demonstration, just like Hubert Cecil Booth did.
Wow.
And guess who David T. Kennedy saw at this demonstration?
Who? Not Booth.
He saw Booth.
He saw Booth. Did he also heckle Booth?
The karma comes back round to the heckler. Do you know what Kenny did? He bought one of the puffing billies, which I talked about earlier, and also talking earlier about patents, Kenny had been waiting with a patent in the patent office in the US, with a patent for a vacuum cleaner since 1901. He'd been waiting and waiting and waiting for this patent to come through. It was 1907, I think, at this point. He buys a puffing billy from the show, takes it home, because Booth also put a patent in and still hasn't had that approved, and somehow either bought out Booth's patent, so basically kicked him out of a job,
Okay.
and completely took over the vacuuming boom right then and there. So he essentially kicked Booth's patent, bought Booth's patent out of the US market, and his one got approved in 1907. So essentially, what happened here? Did he take the puffing billy back to his warehouse, his office or whatever, and had a little tinker with it, and was like, aha, I can use this technology to improve my own? Or is it a case of he's bought it, and because no one technically owns it yet because there's no patent in the US, he's just been like, there you go, US, I invented this. So I'm not really sure what happened now. I'm not sure the logistics of how patents work in that way. But essentially, in terms of the American industry, Kenny just kicked Booth out.
So he just swallowed it up.
He swallowed it out.
And I'm guessing Booth still had ownership in the UK? I mean, so?
Of his, like, huge machines, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And, like, yeah, we kind of work, our laws, I suppose, work differently. I would hope so, because the patent stuff sounds like an absolute nightmare. But around this time, so 1907, there's this huge, like, vacuum cleaning invention boom. Like, everyone is looking at the new things coming out and improving on that and improving on that. Kenny, same thing. There's so many patents going through, not just his, but others as well, going through the US office. But Kenny has got in there first. Yeah. He's like top dog. And then James M. Spangler comes along during the height of this vacuum cleaning boom, where, you know, I was talking earlier about the ones with the pedals and the huge ones and the small ones. James M. Spangler, born in 1848, died in 1915. He came along with a fucking bag, mate.
A bag.
He came along with a bag.
So before now, no one had really been using bags. They've been using buckets and baskets and the basement of a hotel.
Essentially, basements of hotels, a basement of the White House, and these huge, like, just essentially like metal boxes.
And Spangler comes along with the bag. Like, what are you guys doing?
Finally have a bag. So he was like 60 years old, and he was so sick of the dust in his shop that he just fashioned together a bag on a broom with a little fan, and he'd basically done it. Invented, like, the portable electric vacuum.
So Spangler's kind of created the vacuum as we know it from, like, the early stage. So,
absolutely.
So it was. So this was like a relatively small machine, like it was a one-person thing at this point. It was a one-person thing with a bag that I imagine had Spangler in massive letters on it.
Wow. He wished it had.
Oh.
Because he invented the first successful portable electric vacuum cleaner. However, he didn't have the funds to mass produce it. So for him, it went nowhere.
Oh.
That's the end of Spangler's story. Unfortunately, Spangler.
No.
And
not Spangler.
Spangler, it's poor Spangler. He's gone. But he did show it to his cousin, and his cousin happened to be Suzanne Hoover.
Oh no.
Suzanne Hoover, who was married to William Hoover, and she extolled the brilliance of this new vacuuming system to her husband, William Hoover, who bought the patent for it from Spangler in 1908 and started his own vacuum cleaning company.
Wait, do you have any information on William Hoover? Like, if he had been like an inventor or manufacturer before
So William Hoover from... I didn't dive into Hoover too much, because I think that's going into the kind of modern day vacuum.
Right, okay.
But Hoover, I know that he was in, like, an industry for horse bits, like bridles and saddles and stuff like that.
Right,
and that was an industry that was getting, like, more expensive. And so he needed to... He was a shrewd, like, really good businessman anyway, but he needed to put money into other things and make other investments to make sure, like, his company didn't... Yeah. He wasn't too many eggs in one basket.
It's good to diversify a portfolio.
Essentially, that's what he did. But, like, while all this was happening, this massive technology and boom, you know, David T. Kenny is still inventing things constantly to improve all of his products and, like, make new things. And because of all the things he's got going through the US government with the patents, he has to get himself a patent lawyer to like make sure he's completely covered, because he's got people attacking him in court, attacking his patents, saying, we don't want to pay you a license for this, like, little invention you've made.
Yeah.
Because we've made the rest of the product our own way, but we just, like, borrowed this one idea. But
right, okay.
Kenny owns the idea.
Right.
And so there's so many legal and court battles that Kenny's going through. And so it's like a really weird dichotomy almost, where he's just like this quite almost, I don't even think aggressive because people are coming at him, but he knew what he was doing. He was really shrewd. Again, I wouldn't say cutthroat, but I think he was just straight business.
He did it with intent.
Yeah, and then on the other side of him, you know, you've got this, like, church-based family life, his wife Catherine, who he loved very much, and his daughters, and you know, giving money to charity,
all that stuff.
So
but at the same time, I'll see you in court.
So he had loads of buildings and companies, like, cropping up all over New Jersey and in, like, different states and all over America. And his like company was producing adverts, and one of the taglines was, "Do not allow the use of the dangerous broom." Do you think?
How dangerous were brooms?
I mean, I think brooms can be dangerous. Can't they? I wouldn't want to fall and slip on a broom.
I wouldn't want to fall and slip on a metallic Hoover with a bag.
What about there's like a horrible TV program where that 13 Reasons Why involving a broom.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that.
No, okay. We'll keep it upbeat.
Or like in cartoons when they step on a broom. Well, that's not more of a rake. That's more of a rake.
That's more of a rake.
Okay.
So his whole advertisement was, don't use a broom, they're dangerous.
Do not allow the use of the dangerous broom.
The use.
There's literally a clip that I saw of that voice in the background, and then this like man in a suit, it's all black and white, just going up to this lady who's sweeping a carpet with a broom, and it's like obviously like just loads of talcum powder, just like clouds of dust. He just like walks up to her and just like snatches the broom out of her hand.
Right.
All the while having that horrible like, you know, sexist man smile on, being like, silly woman.
Silly woman with your broom.
Wow.
And this was all... What time period was this?
We're talking like 1908 at this point.
1908. So is this kind of like the time of, I think what they called the Mid-American or the Mid-Atlantic accent, where, you know, where every radio announcer in the US had that weird like, and now we talk about the weird broom. And,
yes.
And like, we're talking about how dangerous these brooms are to our maids. Don't let your woman use a broom.
Can you just read the rest of my outline in that voice?
No, because one, it hurts to talk like that. But
how did they do it?
I don't know. It was some weird. I mean, it's a topic for another time. But that's,
David T. Kenny had so many pennants. He didn't know what to do with them.
It all sounds like a pulp criminal case.
Yeah.
Or something.
It's Chicago.
David T. Kenny and a case on a missing broom.
The broom is dangerous. Kenny versus the broom. So. As I said earlier, the patents were going through the US office, people were taking him to court, but, you know, DTK, he won tons of cases, like, defending his right to his, like, intellectual property, and so all of these vacuum companies all, like, banded together to, like, form associations to like, be like, we don't want to pay you a license fee for using this one idea.
They banded together
against him.
Wow.
But he's just, like, the kingpin of, like, vacuum cleaners, mate. So... And like all the court sided with him, and so he kept winning these cases, and all these companies just had to pay him a license of like 2% every time they sold something.
I think it's a mix of the story and the thought of the stupid voice announcer thing. It's making me think that this guy, and you calling him a kingpin, I'm like, this sounds like the origin story for a villain.
Yeah,
like a proper mafia boss. Like, he got his start in vacuums and soon took over the city.
I mean, I said earlier that this is a story of death as well.
Okay. Foreshadowing.
So, yeah, I mean, like, he won so many cases, and he was all while still giving money to the charity. So, one judge said Kenny founded the modern art of vacuum cleaning, and another described him as storybook inventor.
Yeah, these are very poetic, romantic names for the guy.
And people saw him as like that self-made American man who, you know, started from nothing and has built this all on his own.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I see it.
And
I
he's
mean,
Irish too, which is great.
Oh, that always helps. I mean, I guess all the charity work helped in this image as well. It's like, I mean, if he'd been stealing from nuns instead of giving to nuns, I imagine people would feel very differently about him.
Well, yeah, I presume everyone's was way more religion back in like the early 1900s as well. Yeah. So skipping forward ahead a little bit, so the patents, you know, they were all going, and like, you know, Kenny is just building his fortune at this point. So in the year 1921, this is like the boom has been going on for years now. In 1921, 1,024,167 units of vacuums were sold in the US, making the industry $35 million in that year alone.
That's a lot of money.
And pretty much all of those companies were paying Kenny a license for using like his ideas.
That must have stung.
Yeah.
Every time they sold something, they're like, God damn it, Kenny.
I mean, the good times didn't last though.
No, all right.
They never do, Danny.
Foreshadowing.
They never do.
Okay.
Much like this podcast, they never last. But in early 1922, sadly, Catherine Kelly, David's wife of 35 years, passed away.
Sad.
Very sad. And his sister did too, very shortly afterwards.
Very sad.
Very sad. Unfortunately, David T. Kenny, he committed suicide on May 4th, 1922.
What is it? He was so struck by grief.
After his wife Catherine, they were together for 35 years.
How old was he when?
1922. I don't know right now. I could time with less pressure. I could probably work it out. I mean, not crazy old.
So wait, so he committed suicide on
1922.
See, I'm curious now because
we can work this out.
So no. Wait, I mean, it's cool. So she was his wife for 35 years. Let's say they got married. I don't know.
He was born in 1866.
1866, 1922. So about 60 something. That's just
late 50s.
Late 50s. Let's go with late 50s. Okay. Well,
quick maths.
So quick. I find it fascinating that he unfortunately died in 1922. On my birthday, actually. Wow, check it out. Wow, Star Wars Day.
So that's weird, because like the synchronicities are weird. Because even with this conversation that we're having right now, I had an idea for a show. I was thinking about it. It was only a few days later you were like, mate, I want to do this. And now your birthday has now cropped up as well in the first episode.
Time is a flat circle.
That is weird.
But actually... That wasn't actually the thing I was going to talk about. I just saw it in your notes and I was like, oh, cool. But
don't read my notes.
I'm sorry.
They're not for you.
Too late. I'm just going to read that one date. But the thing that I find interesting is 1922, because that's right before the next kind of economic crisis, wasn't it?
What, the Great Depression?
Yeah.
After World War
Because I was after the Roaring 20s and going into the 30s was around the time. So when you've said commit suicide, and I hadn't quite heard all the dates, I was like, oh, was he just one of the many victims of like economic downturn and everything going to pot? Right?
I was going to say, either way, suicide is an awful thing. But yeah, it was just mainly out of grief. So his companion Catherine died after 35 years of marriage, and his sister then, like within the same year or shortly afterwards, died as well.
I mean, the guy had everything. He was an absolute kingpin, and he had America's vacuums in the palms of his hands.
And he liked to go on holidays to, I think it was called maybe Whitehorn or some beginning with W. And he would just go for long walks in the forest on his own. He loved to get away from the hustle and bustle of the business and stuff like that.
Poor guy.
So yeah, he was found hanging from a tree 10 days after his suicide.
Ooh.
Yeah, so he was hanging there for a while. And, as a Christian, he knew suicide is wrong, as you too will know, and I know from being lapsed Catholic schoolboys.
So lapsed.
But, the coroner who found him deemed it an accidental death, so that he'd be allowed to be buried in a Christian graveyard.
Oh, so they were like, this is obviously suicide, but on the certificate, we're going to say he accidentally tied a rope around his neck and accidentally...
He tripped and fell into a noose off a tree.
Whoops!
Whoopsie!
Yeah.
Well, it was just like
someone
left it hanging and he just like walked into it. Etc.
This is so bad. What, on one of his many long walks?
Look! You go on enough walks, the ratio and chances of death increase.
It's true. It's very true.
Is that true?
Anytime
it sounds true.
Look, just so we can get off this
That's
horrible...
how maths works.
Just so we can get off this horrible topic, let's say it's true, and we'll carry on.
Well, that's the end of my story on where the vacuum cleaner has come from.
Mm-hmm.
That's the journey, pioneered by people on both sides of the pond, and this incredible man Kenny, he was the early leader, and then we've left it open there with Hoover, starting his vacuum cleaner company, that was the way forward then, wasn't it?
But I find it interesting that because as we hinted at the start of this, because you said, I'm going to call it vacuuming, I'm not going to call it hoovering.
Yes.
Because, as you know, I know, and as everyone listening to this knows, they're very interchangeable.
Absolutely.
Where's the hoover? And
it's also quite funny that we, as English people, bearing in mind hoover is an American thing,
so
we use the verb hoover.
Yeah. So very rare. I mean, everyone just says hoover because I guess everyone.
So it's gone from being a noun to becoming in our language the verb for actually vacuuming.
Yeah. And
that's what brands aim to do, isn't it? That's the brand's wet dream.
Yeah, well,
becoming a verb rather than a noun.
That's the thing. It's like when back in
Nike it.
I don't know if that one works.
No, it doesn't.
But it's kind of like how parents back in the day would say oh, where's a Nintendo when they're talking about your Sega Saturn or whatever. Just because, but it's that kind of
one person in Nintendo is just Yes.
Or even now, like people that are like, if they say like an iPad, just to refer to a tablet, any kind of tablet kind of thing. But what I find interesting is that it was because of a guy called Hoover, or his missus, who was called Hoover, when they stole it from Spangler.
Yeah.
Does that mean, in a parallel universe, if Spangler had the money to patent it, we would say, "You're spangling."
I'm really spangled today.
I'm going to spangle the living room. Where's a spangler?
Pass me the spangle.
What kind of spangler is that?
I just so many things we could do with that verb. So many things you could do. Spangler. I mean that was an amicable thing. I think Spangler didn't have enough money, and actually Spangler went to work with Hoover. He was like a superintendent of one of like Hoover's offices, not like a cleaner or superintendent cleaner. He was like
just to really rub it in.
Really rub it in. No, he like oversaw like some of like the operations and stuff.
Do you think like William Hoover looked at me and he looked at Spangler and he was like, "Get the Hoover."
I was like, oh my god, that's so awful. Bring it over here. Bring the Hoover over here.
You talking about a vacuum? No, the Hoover.
And it's like every time Spangler said vacuum, he just like beat him.
just smacks him on the back of it.
What did you call it? What did you? A Hoover.
And then Spangler in the quiet part of the factory in his own little dinky office. He's got one, but it says Spangler.
His desk is a Hoover, it's on its side. His room is decorated with the different versions of the Hoover.
He just has flashbacks to
but Hoover could have given him the money. Hoover was like well off. He could have invested.
This is what I'm saying.
Rather than buying the patent off him.
I'm shocked you say it was amicable.
Then Spangler was 60. Sorry to interrupt you, but I thought Spangler was 60. So he was just like, I'm an old man, maybe I'm CBA.
Fair enough, but I mean, yeah, it still strikes me as a bit of a dick move on Hoover's part to be like, it's like, oh, that thing you invented, this thing that this old man has invented.
Yeah.
Fuck him. I'm going to take it. I'm going to put my name all over it.
I'm going to hire his family to hold salt in the room.
Yeah, I'm going to make him work for me.
I think his wife worked for him as well. I think the whole family and the kids.
I want his whole family under my thumb.
No, I don't know that's true. Don't quote me on that. So I thought to break up the sad story of David T. Kenny's suicide that I'd now go into what we've all been waiting for, which is the penis Hoover-related injuries.
I love the pause before you decided if you were going to call it the penis-related injuries.
So I've got 4 cases that I wanted to talk about when using a vacuum cleaner.
Male listeners, just be warned.
And I should say that this is from a doctor, a group of doctors, a medical writer. This is from a medical journal.
Okay.
Talking about different cases of penises coming in contact with vacuum cleaners.
Just so I'm clear.
Yes.
This is specifically a journal.
This was an article.
Written by professional doctors.
Yes.
As a group, there's
at least 3 doctors attached to this article.
Specifically looking at penis injuries.
Oh yeah, and how they fix them. I mean, there's lots of it goes into lots of medical jargon about how they fixed it and stitched up the lacerations.
I don't know why. I don't know why, but something about the idea of them being fixed seems to hurt more. It makes me wince more. It's like they fixed them.
I think you're going to wince.
Yeah,
so one case reported a 6-year-old man said that he was changing the plug of his Hoover Dustette. There he is, Hoover Dustette vacuum cleaner in the nude while his wife was out shopping. Of course she was.
What a load of nonsense.
It turned itself on and caught his penis, causing tears around the external meatus and deeply lacerating the side of the glands. Glands.
I'm so glad I'm not
glands
educated enough to know the exact location of each of these things.
Have you ever read Lolita?
No. I've watched a version of Lolita, but yeah.
Oh, the Ray Fiennes one?
No, the Jeremy Irons one. The really messed up one.
Oh. I can't remember, Herman Melville? No. Whoever wrote Lolita.
I think I remember you telling me about it. It's a very specific colour.
Glands mauve.
Oh, God.
That's so mauve. Horrible, isn't it?
The horrible colour mauve.
What a way to describe like pink. Like her skin was. Glands mauve.
That's so grim.
Such clever writing, though. Anyway.
So gross.
Speaking of glands, so the external meatus of this 6-year-old man was reconstructed using... repaired with catgut.
Oh, okay. I thought it was terrible already. Yeah. This just makes it worse.
So it's been put together and what's the word when you've got to burn, and then they use a piece of skin to put over it. Skin grafting.
Yeah.
So essentially grafting with cat gut.
On the penis.
On the penis. Case number 2. A 65-year-old railway signalman was in his signal box when he bent down to pick up his tools. Oh, how unfortunate. And caught his penis in a Hoover dustette, which happened to be switched on.
I'm telling you right now, this story, the previous story, and the next 2 stories, every time the thing happens, all I'm picturing in my head is the person being like, oh no!
How did this happen?
Oh no! Who would have guessed? I was nude in my signal box.
At the start of this case file, I've got to say, the writer says, we report 4 cases of penile injury sustained when using a vacuum cleaner, probably in search of sexual excitement.
Oh, okay.
Case number 3. A 49-year-old man was vacuuming his friend's staircase. His friend's staircase, bear in mind. So he's at his mate's house in a loose fitting dressing gown.
Oh no!
This sounds like either like the script. I almost got my tongue there. The script of like a porno script.
Yeah.
The start of a porno script, or like a really bad erotica. I mean, it's like the loose fitting dressing gown.
If all of these guys were like 19 years old instead of like 65 or whatever, this could read as scenes from a fucking American Pie knockoff. Like, yeah, dude, I'm just gonna like vacuum Hoover your stairs. Oh no, my pants! Like,
no, God!
Oh god.
So yeah, this is his friend's house. I can't go for a little bit. It's like, why are you in a dressing gown in your friend's house?
There's a lot to unpack.
That's a lot to unpack. I mean, we don't know any more about this 49-year-old man anyway. So he was vacuuming his friend's staircase. Let's say suitcase. And when intending to switch the machine off, he leant over, leaning across to reach the plug. And at that moment, his dressing gown became undone, and his penis was sucked into the vacuum cleaner. And guess how they fixed this one?
Oh god.
Cat gut.
Ugh.
Everyone gets hooked with cat gut.
Everyone gets
fix all penis injuries. At the end of the report, the writer says, the present patients may well have thought that the penis would be clear of the fan. That's inside the Hoover. Now, I don't think people realise that when you put your dick into a Hoover, there's a fan spinning very close to you.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's so bad. I mean, I haven't ever done this, and it's not something I've ever had to worry about, or will worry about. But, ugh.
The present patients may well have thought that the penis would be clear of the fan, but were driven to new lengths by the novelty of the experience, and came to grief.
They wrote that on purpose.
That's so brilliant, isn't it? And came to grief. I mean, like, if that's going to happen... Oh, I don't know. No, let's not even go there. So in researching penile injuries, I thought there'd be tons of funny ones. I thought it'd be like everywhere. I thought it'd be like BuzzFeed articles being like lols for injuries.
You'll never guess these top 5
vacuum cleaner injuries. But there are actually so many medical journals written about the common urological problem, which is vacuum fucking. There were several articles calling it the common urological problem. It's just like, it shouldn't have a name.
It shouldn't have several articles.
It shouldn't be common.
Yeah.
I wonder, like, today's society, because I don't know when these accidents happened, it can't be that long ago, but like,
I bet it's
we've got flashlights now.
So I hear. I've heard we do have flashlights.
I mean, I personally don't have one, but like, they are there, available.
I mean, here's the thing. Hypothetically, I would be completely unashamed of owning a hypothetical fleshlight.
Absolutely, completely unashamed.
Rather than being exposed as a vacuum fucker. I'm just saying. So you'd be ashamed of the revealing, being known as one. Yeah.
But you wouldn't be ashamed of the act if people didn't find out.
I'm just...
If you could get away with it.
Hypothetical.
Oh, and another man said he had been stabbed during the night. He wasn't stabbed. He got drunk. And he got part of his penis cut off by a vacuum cleaner. But he told police when they found him, bloody in his bed, like that he got stabbed during the night.
The vacuum did it.
The vacuum. No, it was like, yeah. I was like, I was attacked during the night. I was stabbed in the dick.
They went for my dick. It must have... My enemies found me and stabbed me in the dick.
And yeah, he was like missing a chunk.
Oh, dude, how aggressive must he have been going at the vacuum?
I mean, he was drunk though. I mean, the less said about that, the better.
Mm-hmm. I think we've done this section for like a solid 10 minutes, but yeah, the less said about vacuum fucking, the better.
A whole quarter of this episode has been devoted to this, and I think the less said about it, the better.
Yeah, okay.
And that was the early history of the vacuum cleaner and where it came from. So we had a small break, and I had to stop myself talking to Danny about what we've just been talking about. So, I mean, not knowing anything going in, Danny, were you like shocked by what you've heard? Are you surprised? How do you feel after all of that knowledge you've just gained?
I have many feelings. I have many thoughts and feelings, and a weird part of me never wants to touch a vacuum ever again.
It hasn't ruined the Dyson dream for me.
Nah, you still want a Dyson?
No, I still want it.
I think...
Maybe even more now.
So one, I did know about like the Hoover. I knew there was something to do with Hoover in there because of the whole fact that we
William Hoover.
I didn't know he was called William. I didn't know he ripped off poor old man Spangler. I'm gutted that Spangler didn't get his time in the sun.
No.
And I'm gutted that we never had like the argument over whether the historical argument of where they could have been called Spangler.
Whether British people would adopt the verb spangle instead of hoove.
Instead of hoove.
Hoover, Spangler.
Hoover or spangling. That was all very fascinating. I didn't know that there was a vacuum kingpin in early 20th century America.
And it was like legal kingpin too.
Legal kingpin, like court-backed kingpins.
Court-backed. And that's how, the way the world works.
It's just how it is, and
give to the poor on one hand, take from the rich on the other.
He was a real Robin Hood. This guy
of the vacuum. Except for other vacuum companies.
Except for other vacuum. Apart from other,
he didn't give a proverbial fudge about the rest of the vacuum cleaning companies. He was just like, screw you guys, you all have to pay me.
Look at this little cute little startup vacuum company. It'd be a shame if someone sued you and took all your money.
As I said earlier, I didn't
and gives it to the nuns.
Yes, not the nuns again. I didn't fully understand the kind of like detail of the patent, but it sounds like there was literally like one connection inside the device which everybody used, which was Kenny's idea. Mm-hmm. And so it was this one pedantic, tiny connection within the machine that Kenny owned the rights of. So if you used that connection, you had to pay him.
I wonder if that's still in action, if that's still in
Probably.
Effect. Because...
No, patents give up after you like die in 100 years or something.
Do they?
That's, again, don't quote me on that.
Don't
quote me on that.
On this educational podcast.
But there is a point where patents do run out.
Uh-huh. Are you sure you're not thinking about, like, IP? Like media ownership,
Same thing?
Maybe. I don't know. We're both very uninformed in the industry.
I mean, mate, I research Hoovers or patents.
Okay, that's fair. But I do wonder, because if the UK wasn't bound by this, the only thing... Just to bring it back to the start.
Yes.
The only vacuum... brand that I really know about is Dyson.
Yeah, it's true.
And I know the joke like Henry Hoover's or whatever, all that stuff. I don't know of any big American brands of vacuum cleaners.
Well, I know Hoover is still around, but I still, even as a child and like now, I don't think of them as a company so much.
No, it's just a thing.
It's just it's action.
Yeah, it's the it's
Henry is Henry a Hoover?
I don't know.
I know he's a vacuum cleaner.
We're getting very philosophical.
But is he? Who owns Henry?
Is he under?
Or do we all own Henry now?
Who has a Henry? I remember when I first saw how expensive a Henry was. I was like, "Are you taking the piss?"
My mum had a Henry. No, my mum had the girl version.
Oh, Henrietta.
I wanted to say Henrietta, but I don't think it is Henrietta.
No, that'd be too long to write on the box.
I think it is too long to write on the box. But it's Hattie.
Hattie.
I think it might be Hattie.
There's no way that stuck around.
It was a pink one.
It didn't.
Had eyelashes.
Okay. That's a whole other bag. That's a whole other thing to talk about.
Yeah, because if you put them next to each other, they start to look like a weird Duplo blocks, but with actual decent function.
I'm gonna get off this topic now.
So, I mean, Danny, you know, are you still thirsty for knowledge, or is that something we're not going to say?
Oh, I'm so my My thirst for knowledge has been successfully quenched.
I mean, you should have said no, so we could do more episodes.
No,
So
you're right. You're right. I'm still thirsty.
It's never enough. It's never enough.
There's never enough. I do have one final question.
Okay.
Now that we've got the onset of robot vacuum cleaners with Roombas and stuff like that.
Oh, the future.
The future. Do you think that we have yet to have it, or do you think it has already happened, where someone has tried to fuck a Roomba?
It's definitely happened. It's definitely happened. I can fully see humans are depraved and insane, and they will do anything to get their rocks off. Anything. And do you know the old horror stories of people putting peanut butter in places and certain animals coming along and, you know, sexual gratification follows? Definitely someone's like scattered themselves with like crumbs and like bits of dust and like crisp, like just crisp crumbs. That's crumbs. I'm just giant. And like the Roomba comes along here.
The Roomba doesn't know any better.
It's like the Roomba just like, well, because the Roomba has to stay quite low to the floor, getting it on you'd be quite difficult.
sorry. The image I just pictured is someone cutting out a hole in their floor, lying down, and then just sticking something through it, and then the Roomba has to come along and.
Oh no! Oh, that would hurt so much.
And then the person who's perpetrating this doesn't realise that there's a little blade, a little fan right there.
Oh, could you imagine like they put it on their like chest or something to like glide over them? It's just like slicing through their skin as it goes, like a tiny little like a lawnmower, ripping up your like chest hair.
I bet you there's a person who
someone's tried it.
Someone's gone into hospital. Someone's gone into A&E and been like,
the smallest lawnmower in the world.
Yeah, like I accidentally fell over and my little lawnmower ran over my penis.
See, I was fully picturing, you know, Sex in the City, Samantha lying down with like sushi on her, waiting for like her.
Was that a thing?
The first film? Waiting for like her boyfriend to come home and like find her like covered in food, and I'm just like picturing this like very sad person covered in like crisps as like the alternative, but they all go terribly, terribly wrong.
I shouldn't have asked the question.
But I'm glad you asked, because that's a great place to leave it.
I'm not.
This has been 30-something, and I hope that you've learnt something. No, I'm 30-something. This has been 30 for knowledge.
We have been 30 for knowledge.
Sorry, I'm so full of vacuum. I'm full of the vacuum.
Well, that's been 30 for knowledge. George, thank you for thank you for all of that knowledge.
Absolute pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. I've been Danny.
I've been George. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next episode.